Yo, what is up guys? Today we're going to be taking the R3 out for a bit of a spin. My dad will also be joining us for this voyage on his new to him Z1000. Oh yeah, Merry Christmas to everyone, by the way. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Alright, is this guy gonna go? No, he's not. Cool, we're safe. This bike is getting closer and closer to being sold, so I have precious little time left with this thing, and I thought I would do a review on it before I say goodbye. So here we are, faffing about in 30-degree plus weather, in a leather jacket. At least I'm not wearing leather pants. I've got these new to me riding jeans on, and they're actually doing an okay job in terms of being a little bit cooler. Alright, let's start with a bit of context. So I've owned this bike for about 4 or 5 months now, closer to 5. I have put a decent few number of kilometers on them, but a good majority of that has been commuting on the M1 and not a lot of twisty runs, but that's fine. I'm still very much a beginner in terms of riding. My motorcycling journey began at the start of this year. So everything I say is going to be from that kind of lens, which I think is good, because if you aren't some superhero track star dude looking for a written off R3 to hurl around closed circuits, then you're most likely a beginner or a learner looking to get into motorcycling. So you guys can hear it from the perspective of a fellow learner who made that decision to start off with an R3, kind of. As mentioned, I did start off with something else, but this was bike number 2, and I'm still very much a beginner. Let's kick things off with power. Now, the power plant in the Yamaha R3 is a parallel twin 4-stroke engine with a capacity of 321 cubic centimeters. If power is what you're looking for in your beginner bike or your learner bike, forget about it. The R3 is not for you. There are plenty of learner legal options out there with a bit more power and plenty more torque. This is a 320cc. It's not going to give you anything crazy in terms of power and or torque. Whoops, was not paying attention, was messing around with my visor. It's still a zippy engine with as much power as you'd probably need for a learner who does a little bit of zipping around in the suburbs and or town, and it is perfect for if you're up in the hills doing your recreational hill runs or kind of learning how to ride track. Woo! What a bike. I have missed it. Let's move on to the handling. Now this is where a bike like the R3 really shines. It's got a relatively shorter rake and trail, I believe it's called. And what this means is it handles like an absolute beast. Couple that with the fact that it is a narrow bike. It is so easy to flick around, maneuver, and I've been told the narrower a bike is, the easier it is to learn how to lean and to hang off it without actually needing as much lean angle on the bike itself. And because of the fact that it is underpowered compared to a 600cc Supersport, you are going to be having a blast, because you could be wringing it out to its absolute limit and still be relatively safe and still be having a relatively good time. What an amazing bike. That's all I can really say about it. Hey, we got a nod. I love that. So handling wise, this thing is incredible, and as a dude who's used it predominantly for commuting, I have so much untapped potential left to discover in this bike, which is the biggest reason I am sad about selling it. Another biker, nod. He did not knock back. Cracks in the road. There it goes. Now, again, relative to anything else in its class, it has a pretty sporty riding position. It still is a sports commuter. It's not a super sports motorcycle, and that is evidenced. And that is evidenced by the raised clip-ons. So yes, it has clip-ons like a super sport, but unlike a super sport, they are raised, giving you a much comfier commuter seating position. The rear sets are actually a little higher and a little further back than, say, a Ninja 400 or a CBR 500, a CBR 300, and so on. So it's got a wee bit of an aggressive rider triangle, and that goes part and parcel with that incredible handling I was talking about earlier. You really feel poised. You feel like you're sitting on your haunches, ready to pounce at any corner that a track or a road can throw your way. The R3 is also extremely light, and it has a low seat, meaning if you're a beginner or a shorter rider, this thing will be a breeze. Commuting. This thing is fantastic for commuting, especially shorter distances in the suburbs or in town, and that's because it is a small bike. It's also really narrow, which means that lane filtering is a breeze. You can maneuver it quite easily. Pretty much anyone and their dog can flat foot this thing, and that in turn makes it really easy to park in those tricky spots. If we stop, it's going to get even hotter. Open your visor. We'll stop in Cockatoo. I mean, like Emerald or something. I think this town is Cockatoo. It's tiny. It's hardly even a town. I was so confused why it was taking us there. Turns out that's Cockatoo. So I've predominantly been using this bike for commuting. This section I feel really comfortable talking about because that's pretty much all I've used the R3 for. In terms of the commute, I really can't complain about many areas when it comes to this bike. However, there is one major flaw that this bike has, and it ended up being one of the biggest reasons I upgraded, and that is that it is just terrible for the freeways. Now, it's extremely subjective. I was talking to a guy one day, and he was happy with his VTR 250 on the freeways, and here I was upgrading to an R3 from a 250cc because the 250 didn't cut it for me, and I've now upgraded from a 320cc to a 400 because the 300 was not enough. Now, I made a video comparing the R3 to the Ninja 400 on the freeway, so go watch that if that's something you're interested in. But I'm a guy who likes to sit low in the RPMs when I'm cruising. The only time I want to be pushing a bike, you know, getting that needle anywhere near redline is when I'm explicitly trying to do so. I don't want to be sitting on the freeway at 100, 110k an hour feeling like the bike is going to blow up in between my legs. The unfortunate thing is that's kind of what happens when I ride the R3 on the beloved M1. Where do I go from here? In every other aspect of my commute, the R3 was perfect. It was cheap on petrol, it was easy to maneuver, it's easy to lane filter, you can park it almost anywhere on the planet. But unfortunately, a huge part of my commute involved the M1, sitting at 110k an hour for prolonged periods of time, and it just wasn't comfy. It's easy to do, you know, like the bike can easily get to 100, 110 and sit there. The problem is it doesn't sit there comfortably. It feels like a bit of a buzz box between your legs. And that is the biggest flaw, in my opinion, with the R3. If you live in a first world country where freeway speed limits are 100k an hour or more, and if you're someone who has to take the freeway a lot, then the R3, in my opinion, is not the strongest pick. This thing is king of the class in almost every other category, but it just can't compete with raw displacement. And if anything, that makes the R3 a pretty damn good bike in its class, if the only thing that I can properly fault about it relates to not just the R3 but every bike that it competes against. So ultimately, yes, this bike has one massive flaw, but it's nothing to do with the Yamaha R3 itself. It's more to do with the 300cc class as a category. The thing is a beast for what it is and what you can pick these up for. It's also got an awesome dash. It's got an LED shift light, it's got your temperature, it's got a fuel gauge, it's got your multiple trip computers, and I found this to be really helpful, especially coming from a bike that was made in 1995 and didn't have any of those creature comforts, so that makes the commute even better. And of course, one thing I'd like to mention again is the cost. So you can pick these up for really cheap nowadays, and that is a lot of bike for the amount of dollar you're spending. And because it's an R3, it's kind of like the Camry of the bike world. They are everywhere, they're really hard to kill, but parts are plentiful. There is so much aftermarket support, OEM parts, there is no shortage of that. It is a learner class bike, which means all of these parts are readily available and cheap too. Because of its capacity, it's cheap to insure, it's cheap to run. I average around 3.7 litres per 100 kilometers, which is crazy, but it probably helps that I sit in 6th gear on the freeway a lot. So there you have it, guys. In my opinion, this is the best learner bike you can get in terms of bang for buck. An awesome bike, and I would definitely be keeping this if a majority of my commute was not spent on the freeway. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you took something away from it, and I hope you go buy an R3 if you're in the market for one. Remember to like, comment and subscribe. I will see you guys on the next one.
You say you got them guns, but I've never seen you bang. You say you got them drugs, but I've never seen you slang.